Welcome to video 2. We're finally going to start making things happen with the pen tool. In this video, we're going to learn how we draw with the pen tool and how we plot our points rather than draw like a regular pencil. We'll learn about the various types of anchor points when we are drawing with the pen tools, and we'll also learn how to modify the vectors using the control handles. So if you are ready to start making things happen in Illustrator, keep watching. So now that we know about stroke and fill and how to use the pen tool a little bit, let's go ahead and start drawing our character. First thing we're going to do is grab our pen tool, and you can either grab it from the toolbar or you can press P, and P will automatically give you a quick key to access the pen tool that way. From here, let's find a place to start. And how I start, I usually look for a crisp corner that has like a corner anchor point, rather than start someplace that has a curve coming from both sides. I think it's easier to start with a sharp corner, but you can start anywhere you feel comfortable. Instead of just plopping it down, I'm going to start here, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag slightly up to the left so my path has a bit of a curve. Then I'm going to come up to the top, somewhere in the center, and it doesn't have to be exact. So you're going to click and drag to the right. You can hold your shift key, and it'll keep it constrained to a 90-degree angle. And when you feel that starting to match, that looks like it's matching my drawing pretty well. So I'll just release there. And then right where this corner here meets the next curved, I'm going to put an anchor point there, and I'm going to click and drag down towards the bottom left corner. And when that matches up, and it's okay that it's off, it's fine. You can release it there. Now I'm going to change direction. I'm going to use a change direction anchor point, which we used in the pen tool video. I'm going to do that by clicking that previous anchor point so I can change direction anywhere I'd like, but where I want to go is right here in the chin, somewhere in the center. I'm going to click and drag to the left, and I'm going to hold the shift key to keep it constrained to a 90-degree. And when it gets to an angle that matches my drawing somewhat, I'll release, and then we'll close our path over here where we started. And I know I'm closing it because if you can see, my cursor is getting this little circle icon next to it. If I go away, it disappears. And now that I'm on top of that anchor point, you see it appear. Go ahead and close it. So there we go. We've successfully drawn the outline of the head. So if you want to adjust it, we can go to the direct selection tool over here. And with that tool, we can click anywhere off to the side to deselect it. I can go and if I touch anywhere on this path, it's going to show me the control handles between the areas I just selected. So if I go and select on this corner, I'm going to get the control handle. I can go ahead and I can fine tune this if I wanted to. This looks pretty good, but maybe it just needs some little tweaks. So I'm going to enlarge, Command plus, I think Control plus on your Windows. And I'm going to grab this anchor point. I'm just going to pull it down a little bit. That looks a little bit better. I'm going to select this one, maybe give this a little bit more curve here, maybe a little bit less curve on the top. I'm just going to pull this anchor point in. Again, I can hold the shift key and constrain it to a 90-degree angle. And then I can come over here to layers and turn off the bottom layer. And I can see how well that shape stands on its own without the drawing behind it. And it looks pretty good. So I'm just going to go with that for now. Okay, so let's move on. Let's draw the eyes. So I'm going to press P to go back to my pen tool. And then from there, I'm going to start here at the top because that looks like a good corner point. So I'll click here. And then since these eyes kind of curve into each corner, they're not like hard corners on both sides, I'm going to stop at the top where it starts to curve into the next bottom part. So I'm going to start probably around here, stop right about here. I'm going to hold my shift key so I'm going straight down. Then I'm going to click and drag down just slightly. Then I'm going to move over here where the curve is starting to straighten out. I'm going to click, hold the shift key and drag to the left and release. I'm going to continue to hold the Shift key. I'm going to move over here where it starts to curve up. Click and drag to the left. Then come up here to the eyes. I'm going to click and drag up. And then I'm going to release the Shift. And I'm going to close my path, and I'm going to click and drag to the right until my path matches the drawing. And there we go. So let's go ahead and select our selection tool. Tap anywhere on the artboard to deselect everything and turn off the sketch behind it. And Command plus to zoom in a little bit. So now I can see the outside. We've drawn the outside of the eyes. If I wanted to fine tune that, I'll press A or go to this direct selection tool. It looks pretty good for the most part. I think I might just drag this control handle down a little bit. Maybe take the anchor point down, I should say, and then drag the control handle down slightly and then drag this one closer. The thing about these, it will look better if they don't overlap. And by that, I mean if I pull this past this one, if I click and show you, you can see it's starting to warp a little bit. So we don't want that. Just shy of overlapping or connecting with each other usually comes out a nice curve. And that looks pretty good. So we're going to go with that. I'm going to turn my sketch back on. So let's draw the inside frame of the eye. So let's start down here. I'm going to start below the outer frame and we're going to clip it. So let's just start by clicking here, and then we'll get to the top and we'll click and drag to the right. And you can hold the Shift key if you want to constrain it. Then come over here outside the outer frame. Then come down. Then we're just going to close our path. So we clicked here, we clicked and dragged to the right, made another anchor point on the outside. Another one down here. I guess this one's really not needed. I could have made this one down here. And then over here. Just as long as we have a closed path. Okay. So now we have the inner frame of the pupil drawn. And maybe I want to round that a little bit. Let's see. Let's go ahead and close that up. And then let's take our anchor point tool. So if we click and drag this pen tool, we get some options. The where I want to go is the anchor point tool. And that tool enables us to change some of these anchor points. And what I want to do is I want to click and drag this point. And when I do that, I get the control handles. So it's going to change this from a corner anchor point to a smooth anchor point. So now I can create more curves there. If I were to click here, it would change it to a corner anchor point. But I don't want that. So we're going to Command Z and undo that. So that's a little bit how this anchor point tool works. So let's hit P to go back to our pen tool. And I think that looks better. So let's draw the inner pupil first. So let's hit P. And what I did for there, I made it very simple. I started at the top, click and drag to the left, go to the very bottom, click and drag to the right, come back up, click and drag to the left. So I get this oval shaped. And this one will definitely need to adjust a little bit. So turn off the photo layer. And let's go ahead and tweak this pupil a little bit. I'm just going to select the top anchor point, slide it over so it doesn't have to look exactly like I'm doing it or anything like mine. Okay, so that looks less warped and less uneven. I like the imperfectness of it, so I'm going to leave some of this uneven shapeness to it. So let's go ahead and trim these out. For the inner pupil, I'm going to take the outer frame. So here's step one. Select the outer frame and copy that. Then select anywhere on the artboard to deselect it. Then select the inner artboard. I guess we didn't have to deselect it. We can select the outer or the inner pupil frame, the outer pupil frame, and then with both of them selected, come over here to Pathfinder. If you don't see it, it might be here in your Properties panel. And if it's not there, go to Windows, Pathfinder. Mine's already open, but there's where you'll find it, and you'll get this dialog box here. It also shows in the path in the new properties panel for you as well. So from here, I'm going to go to this option here. I'm going to select intersect. And what that should do is that should take the two objects I selected and trim out all the parts, leaving only the parts where the two shapes are intersecting, if that makes sense. So we should only get this inner part. So if we click it, it did exactly what we hoped. It just kept the intersection between the two shapes. We have that, but we lost our outer frame. But remember, we copied it. So we're going to go to Edit, and we're going to paste it in the back. So it's behind this pupil and that pupil. And there we go. So this inner frame is now matches the shape of the outer frame where they meet here. So that looks pretty good. So now let's do this again with the center of the eye, I guess. And then, so we're going to select this frame here, which is the inner frame, copy it. Then we're going to hold the shift key so we can select both this inner frame and then the center of the eye. So now we have them both selected. And I'm going to go back to intersect. This time I'm going to hold the option key and I'm going to click it. And it gave me the same results as the previous intersection, except with the added bonus that if I want to go at a later time and move this around, this frame, it preserved the entire shape. You just don't see it. So it's masked out by the previous inner frame, if that makes sense. But it had the same effect. This one lends a little bit more editability. So that one I use quite a bit. So then we need to get back our inner frame. So we're going to paste in back. And there we go. So we have successfully created the pieces of the eye. The last thing I want to do is go back to layers, turn back my sketch in. We're going to duplicate this frame over here so we have exact copy of it. So I'm going to take my selection key tool. I'm going to click and drag both of these, all three of these shapes. Then I'm going to hold my option key and my shift key, and I'm going to just drag over to this section with the eye. And when I hold the option key, it makes a complete copy. And shift just keeps me completely in line with the other object. So I made a successful copy. From here, the last thing I'm going to do is go towards the middle over to where I see the rotate tool. I'm going to click and hold that down. And then from there, I get some more options. I want to get the reflect tool. And with the reflect tool, I'm going to click and drag and pull to the right. Hold the shift key to constrain it. And when you see it reflect to the opposite side, I'm going to release it. So it looks like that. From there, I'm going to take my selection tool and then I'm going to use the arrow tool, the right arrow tool, and just tap it over until it hovers over the area where I drew the other eye. Click anywhere on the artboard. Then turn off your sketch layer. And there you go. We have now created both eyes and the frame of the head. So that's pretty much all we use the pen tool in this drawing for. The rest is with pencil tool, and we'll get into that next.